Hello and a very warm welcome. You know, in the world of international trade, getting paid is, well, it's everything, isn't it? But there's this one common payment method called Documents Against Acceptance, or DA, that comes with a bit of a hidden catch. If you're an exporter, understanding exactly how DA works isn't just a good idea. It's absolutely essential to protect your business.
So let's imagine for a second. You've done all the hard work, the goods are packed, they're on their way, and you've agreed to DA terms. But then that little question pops into your head. Is my payment really guaranteed? That tiny seed of uncertainty is exactly what we're going to dive into and unpack together today.
And here's the heart of the issue. When you use D/A, it's you, the exporter, who is shouldering almost all of the financial risk. Now, why is that? Well, it's because unlike some other methods, there's no bank standing by, guaranteeing your payment. This really creates a high-stakes situation that you need to know how to manage perfectly.
So, to help you navigate all this, we've got a clear roadmap. First, we'll cover what DA collection actually is. Then, we'll get into the primary risks you'll face as an exporter and the key documents that make it all happen. We'll also clarify the very limited role the banks play, and most importantly, we'll show you how to reduce those risks. Sound good? Let's get started.
All right, so first things first. What exactly is a DCC collection? To really understand the risks, we have to start with the fundamentals and get the basics right.
So, at its core, documentary collection is a process where banks basically act as middlemen. You can think of them as highly trusted couriers. You, the exporter, give the bank a set of documents, and the bank then presents those documents to the importer. The key thing to remember here is that banks facilitate this exchange. They don't guarantee the final outcome.
And this is where the term Documents Against Acceptance comes from. It's kind of all in the name. The importer gets the all-important shipping documents, basically the keys to your goods, before they've actually paid you a single cent. All they have to do is sign a document accepting the bill and promising to pay later. As you can probably guess, this is a transaction that's built almost entirely on trust.
Okay, let's walk through the process step by step. First, you ship your goods and hand over all that important paperwork to your bank. Your bank then forwards those documents to the importer's bank. The importer gets a heads up, they come in, and they accept what's called a bill of exchange, which is just their formal IOU. Now, pay close attention, because this next part is the critical moment. As soon as they accept, the bank hands over the documents. With those in hand, the importer can go claim the goods from customs. Now notice, they have your product, but step 6, the actual payment, is still weeks or maybe even months away. That gap, that's where all the risk is hiding.
Right. That time gap between the importer getting your goods and you getting the money, that's where things can really go sideways. Let's break down the biggest risks that you're facing as an exporter in this situation.
The biggest risk, the absolute nightmare scenario, is payment default. The importer signs the papers, they take your goods, and when the due date for the payment finally rolls around, you hear nothing. Crickets. They just don't pay. And because they already have the title to the goods, you're left with almost no leverage. Now, another major risk can happen even earlier in the process. What if they just refuse to accept the documents? The paperwork arrives at their bank, but the importer never shows up to sign the bill of exchange. Maybe the market for your products suddenly collapsed, or maybe they just found a cheaper supplier. Whatever the reason, your goods are now stranded in a foreign port, racking up storage fees, and you have to figure out what to do. Sell them at a huge discount, or pay a fortune to ship them all the way back home.
And, you know, the risks don't even stop there. You could run into commercial disputes where the buyer takes the goods, but then claims there's some problem with the quality, just to get out of paying. Or there could be bigger country-level issues, like political instability or new currency controls that physically stop the payment from being sent, even if the buyer wants to pay you.
This all brings us to the ultimate consequence. And this quote really sums it up perfectly. The exporter may lose both the goods and the payment. It's a total loss. And that is the primary risk that DA terms expose you to. So, how is this whole risky process even managed? Well, it all comes down to paperwork. In a documentary collection, these documents aren't just for filing away. They are the keys that control the entire transaction. So here are the usual suspects you'll be dealing with. The bill of exchange. That's the critical financial document, the importer's official promise to pay. The commercial invoice is just the bill of sale. And maybe the most important one is the transport document, like a bill of lading, because that's often the title to the goods. Whoever holds that document can claim the shipment. The others, like the packing list and certificate of origin, are also vital for getting through customs. So this brings us to an absolutely crucial point. Every single piece of information across every single one of these documents has to be perfectly clear, precise, and consistent. You have to understand, banks don't look at your goods. They only look at the documents on their face. A tiny discrepancy, a single typo, or a conflicting detail between the invoice and the packing list, that can cause the entire process to grind to a halt and give a nervous buyer a perfectly valid reason to refuse the whole thing.
This focus on paperwork brings us to the bank's very limited role. A lot of exporters make the dangerous mistake of thinking the bank is their safety net. It's much better to think of them as specialized mail carriers, not as financial guarantors.
Okay, so on your side, you have the remitting bank, which simply sends your documents along. On the buyer side, you have the collecting bank, which presents them and releases them when they're accepted. But look at the most important line here. For both of them, neither bank guarantees payment. They are simply following instructions. That's it.
I know we've touched on this, but let's just say it one more time because it is the single most important thing to understand about the banks in this process. Their job is to facilitate the exchange of documents. They are not on the hook for the money. If the buyer defaults on their promise, you cannot go to the bank and demand payment. The risk stays entirely with you.
Okay, we have spent a lot of time on the risks, so now let's pivot to the solutions. How can you actually use DA terms more safely? This section is all about the proactive plan you can put in place to protect your business.
Here is a practical 5-step plan for you. Number 1, do your homework. Before you even agree to DA terms, really investigate your buyer's credit history and their reputation in the market. 2, get insured. Trade credit insurance was basically designed for this exact scenario. It protects you if your buyer doesn't pay. 3, ask for a bank guarantee. You can request that the importer's bank add something called an AVL to the bill of exchange, which basically makes the bank liable for payment. 4, provide crystal clear instructions to your own bank. Leave absolutely no room for confusion. And finally, number 5, use a risk-based approach. DA is really best reserved for long-term, trusted partners, not for brand new customers.
And just to put all of this into perspective, let's compare DA to a much more secure option, the letter of credit, or LC. The difference is just stark. With DA, your risk is high because the bank is just a facilitator. With an LC, your risk is low because the bank actually acts as a guarantor. For any new or high-value deals, an LC is almost always going to be the safer choice.
So let's just boil this all down one last time. The core principle of DA is that the goods are released before payment is received. This creates that huge primary risk of buyer default, where you can lose both your product and your money. Always remember, banks are just following instructions. They do not guarantee your payment. But you're not powerless. You can absolutely protect yourself through smart due diligence, getting insurance, and only using DA where a high level of trust already exists.
Now, we would love to hear from you. If you're an exporter, what are your preferred payment terms? Have you used DA? We'd love to hear your experiences, the good and the bad, down in the comments. Your insights might really help someone else in the community. And of course, if this was helpful for you, please give it a like and subscribe for more explainers just like this one. And we'll leave you with one final thought to chew on. As technology like blockchain continues to evolve, could it finally solve this DA dilemma? Just imagine a future that blends the flexibility of DA with the solid security of digital guarantees. It's a really exciting space to watch. Thanks so much for joining us.